Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the second lecture in the Royal Armouries 2025 to 26 Winter Lecture Series. I'm Mark Bennis, I'm the museum's research manager. Thank you very much for joining us today. The Royal Armouries, for those who aren't familiar with us, is the UK's national collection of arms and armour. We started life as a medieval stockpile of military equipment at the Tower of London. When Henry VIII came to the throne, these medieval objects were replaced by new armours, many made by imported craftsmen in the new workshops at Greenwich. Exceptional Royal Armours and some more functional pieces were preserved throughout the Civil War, the Commonwealth and the Protectorate. And while you can see some of them at the Tower, you'll have to come up to Leeds in order to see them in action. These talks are part of our mission to promote the public's understanding and enjoyment of arms and armour. Now, this is our last talk before Christmas, but if you're up for an adventure in the new year, you've got time to join us for our early career researcher event at Fort Nelson in Portsmouth. This is on the 8th of January, and there'll be a number of papers from new researchers in the field. There'll be a keynote talk on early modern fortifications, there'll be a tour of the fort, and there'll be a handling session. And your tickets include not just refreshments, but transport between Portsmouth and the fort on the day, in case you were worried about how to get there. So for more details, go to royalarmouries.org, choose Fort Nelson at the top of the page and click what's on, and that will take you to that. Just some technical stuff for the talk today. So after the event, we'll be taking questions from the YouTube chat, Zoom Q&A function, and from people here in the audience. If you're submitting them online, then feel free to send them through just as they come to you, and I'll put them to speaker after the talk. If you need them, there are subtitles online using the CC button in Zoom and YouTube. And if you would be interested in sending us some feedback, that would be very much appreciated. I will drop a link in the chat. There are also links in the opening and closing slides, but please do let us know what you think. With all these mundane, boring technical matters out of the way, let's come to the meat of the event. So in 1962, the team who were attempting to design the world's first spacesuit wrote to the Armouries asking for details of Henry VIII's foot combat armour for the field of cloth of gold. And this paid tribute to the skills in both design and manufacturing that was demonstrated at the peak of armour development around the turn of the 16th century. And to explore these topics in further detail, we have Dr. Daniel Jaquet, who is currently joining us from a Fulbright scholarship at the University of Chicago. So without any further ado, over to you, Daniel.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm really pleased to be on this lecture series, and I will share my slides and get right on it. So,
yeah, perfect. Coming through for us.
And here we go. So medieval armors as high-tech exoskeletons. What a weird title. Exoskeletons, when we are thinking about this, well, that comes to mind. This is the Mark 1 to 7 for the Iron Man movie at the Comic-Con. So, of course, in the popular culture, we're thinking of exoskeleton like this or like this. So this is an APU, so an armored person unit to augment soldiers. And this is from Matrix Revolution in 2003. But actually, this comes from medieval armor, the idea of it. And medieval armor are high-tech exoskeletons, very high technological elements. If we look at Bashford Dean, the curator of arms and armor at the Metropolitan Museum, he was a keen researcher, and his background was a biologist and ichthyologist. That's why he wanted to present the armor into an evolutionary diagram, as you can see here for the breastplates, the gauntlets, and the helmet in an article published in 1915. So, of course, medieval armor is not one object. It has evolved, changed drastically throughout the centuries. And I'm sure all of the audience is very familiar with what a medieval armor is. But just for the sake of it, here it is. And the scholar Claude Blair, who worked at the Royal Armouries, devised or is the reference for what he called an armor typology. And it mainly, he says that an armor, whatever it stands for European side, it's composed of three elements. So it's mail, it's fabric, hardened fabric or leather, and plates. And often it's a combination of the three elements. At the height of the development of this specific technological element is the 15th century. This is what it looks like, an armor of the 15th century. I'm interested in objects, but I'm really interested in how they move. So what's the impact of the armor on the body and how you could actually move through it. So if you want to look with me at these different components, this is my replica, and here you can see some parts of it. And look at the different elements. So you have here fabric hardened, you can see mail, you can see plates that goes over it. Everything attached to the body on a technical undergarment, which is the arming doublet. This was a promotional video made for a few ones. So this replica is special. How special is it? Because you've seen replicas of medieval armor. You can see them live at the Royal Armouries as well. I chose this suit for different reasons. I will get into this later, but this is a suit dated from 1452, attributed to the Friedrich the Victorious, which is a Prince Palatin Prince in Germany. And it's named as field armor, but as you know, these are different pieces. So basically, when you're a prince or a wealthy aristocrat, you would get not one armor, but many pieces that you will assemble differently for the purpose of it. For which purpose you want to use this armor. Just stop like the sound here. You don't have the sound, I'm sorry. You will see so this is a nice shot that we did with Stefan Krause. So that's where the original armor display is, and I was able to stand on that podium and have fun with it. So the idea of these videos that I made in my research is about stepping through misconceptions. Of course, and to show that the medieval armor actually gives you sometimes greater mobility than you think. But let's look at what real armor are here with a few examples that I took from the Royal Armouries Great Collection. And these are my favorite ones, of course, and everybody knows them. So that's the lion armor. And you can see here the decoration, embossed lions with false damascening in repeating floral pattern with gilding, beautiful set, dating 1550, and supposedly for the King Henry II, French king. For another king, a king that you know well, Henry VIII, this is a gift from the one specific person that is really known as the Last Knight. There was a beautiful exhibition in New York about him. So we're talking about this horn helmet. It's a present from the Emperor Maximilian to Henry VIII during a tournament. And you can see the crazy mastery of craftsmanship and metal here. But my two preferred suits that I kept at the Royal Armouries, and one that was introduced in the beginning by Mark Bennett, the one that was used by the NASA engineers to design the spacesuit, is this particular suit. So it's tailor-made for Henry VIII for the tournament of the Field of Cloth, and they exchanged between the two kings that they wanted to have a chivalric display of arms. And depending on what you want to do, then you would have different armor. So this one is made for foot combat in armor with a poleaxe. And they decided maybe it was not a great fit for this, so he made a second one. This is a tonlet armor. So this one is made for foot combat tournament with the long sword, so the two-hand sword. So very different shapes, very different way to move in it. And as you know, the history tells us that they decided not to use any of these armors, but they fought in a wrestling match. Let's go to a last one that is also in the collection. This is one of my favorite movies, so that's a prop. It was worn for the movie Excalibur by John Bowman in 1981, and this is Lancelot armor. And is this accurate? Is this not accurate? So basically, my talk today is about this. So you can see here what we can think today as an armor with the Lancelot armor from the movie, what we can see as an armor in the more recent popular culture as an exoskeleton, and this crazy armor for foot combat which is one of the best examples on how you can push the limits of mobility to a suit with covering every part of the body. But of course, and this you are also familiar with, these misconceptions about the fact that we see the armor as something that is very heavy, in which you cannot move, you cannot see, you cannot hear. I wrote a piece in the Iron Man exhibition at the Kunsthistorisches Museum in 2022 about exactly this. How can you see? How can you hear? How can you speak? What can you sense? What are the different feelings while wearing an armor? If we have to explain this over and over and over again, it's because of one particular individual. So the guilty one of all of these misconceptions is Mark Twain. When he wrote that novel, The Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, where his main character is travel through times and see these weird and cumbersome people in the armor. So basically, he says that he finds that wearing armor, it's ridiculous. He describes it as cumbersome and filled with bugs, a symbol of the archaic world that is trapped in, contrasting with the practicality of his modern mind. Though he also ironically used it to trap others in factory systems later, highlighting of his own armor of technological superiority becomes a different kind of prison. Twain basically satirizes chivalry through angst, his character, awkward experience in armor, which he compares as flatboats and rat traps, revealing the absurdity of medieval knighthood from a 19th century perspective. It's this image of a cumbersome man in armor made it to the cinema in the movies. You can see the beautiful Henry V movie where the knight has to be hoisted into the saddle because he cannot do this. This is an invention that comes from Mark Twain, and it is really embedded into the mind and to the modern mind. Also, the mind from specialists. So this is an excerpt from a fencing historian, so Egerton Castle, in his book School and Master of Fence. And he wrote about these medieval times where we fought in armor. Rough and untutored fighting of the Middle Ages represented faithfully the brain of brute force in social life as well as in politics. The stoutest arm and the weightiest sword won the day. Those were the days of crushing blows with mace and glaive, when a knight's superiority in action depended on his power of wearing heavier armor and dealing heavier blows than his neighbor, when strength was loaded more than skill, and minstrels sang of enchanted blades that note could break. So this is very Victorian idea, and we have to remember that all of these people, they were living in castles, and they wanted to have this memory of this distorted vision of the Middle Ages, and when they encountered objects, they were often copies populating the castle. So if a young gentleman, which is not a natural-born aristocrat, he would buy replicas of armors which were heavier, so made as costumes to decorate the hall. So they were very heavy. These were not original objects. So enough with this and misconceptions. You know all about this. If you don't know, this is the work of Dave Brading, running a great survey in 2010, oh well, in 2000, sorry, at the Metropolitan Arms and Armour. You can read through them. These are all of the misconceptions that the visitors of one of the greatest museum in the US soil about arms and armor had. And of course, it's not true. And most of them are coming from the 19th century. And since they are still so populated, it's over and over again our work as researchers, museum curators, to explain this to the public, of course. And I have been quite successful as making public engagement video from my work. Some of them 5 million views on YouTube. But actually, I was not the first doing this. And this is from Bashford Dean. When they tried, so the Metropolitan Museum tried for the first time to use the new media of video as an educational tool. So this is called A Visit to the Armors Galleries. It dates from 1920. And in this, you have incredible scenes. So for example, the creators, Bashfordine, said, well, basically an armor is the same weight as the modern soldier. Of course it is. And this is a very powerful image because people can relate of what a soldiers wear. They could not relate of what a medieval knight would wear. And in this video, which is very long, you can watch it on the Metropolitan Museum side. They are going through all of these misconceptions. So if a knight comes down on the ground, he cannot stand up. Of course, this is a misconception. So basically, I was not the first doing this, and a long line and long history of scholars and researchers and museum professionals were doing this already. So yes, they are exoskeletons. I just took this a little bit further. Let me just show. This video is 6 minutes, but let's just see an excerpt. So basically, I wanted to do the same as Bashfordine did, is to put in front of the eyes of the wide audience that the armor is exactly the same weight as a firefighter equipment or a modern soldier. And for this, we did an obstacle run to see who would perform the best. And this is the weighting part. So we weighted what was worn under and what was worn above. And here I'll pause and you can see this is the ratio between the added weight and the weight of the person. And this is where it's critical. So of course it varies. You have different armors we know from the collections that were heavier or lighter. It all depends, and it's true since the Roman times. If you want to have a warrior that wears an armor, you should not have more than 30% of your added weight. You can have more, you would just function less for a less long period of time. So we have very heavy armor for specific feats or deeds of arms, like jousting armor, that will not be worn on the battlefield, which were more than this ratio. But most of the armor would be under that. So it depends also on the weight of the wearer. Knowing this part, you let me talk to you a little bit about my research and the findings that I had about this armor. So I'm interested into the martial gesture. So basically how you would move into this armor and how you would fight with them. So that was my PhD dissertation. And if I can do this, all right. So the idea is in order to learn a gesture, you have to learn it, you have to perform it, you have to have context of the materiality and the context of this gesture. So these are the disciplines that I've been looking at, and I'm an historian. But of course, you also want to know what happens in your body and your brain, and actually how it impacts your range of motion. And you also have to look at the objects. That includes also bones and human remains, as well as artifacts. So basically, what I've been doing is putting this replica, which is not a replica that was made to actually mimic or represent visually the original, but rather display the mechanical behavior of the original armor. So same weight, same fashion as how it would move. And we did some motion capture of it. So basically, this is standard procedure. It's called the gait analysis. But we also studied all of the different movements and compared it with my performance of movements without having this. And the study showed an incredible truth, which is above the misconceptions, is that basically an armor would not impact your movement. So for the gait analysis, we had a difference of 2% in motion. And for standard movements, so all of the different movements, you would have different movements that were restricted and some completely free. But I'll get into this later. So in order to do this, of course, this is made with a replica, and I wish I could wear the original armor. I could never wear this one. It's too fragile, the leather and everything. But as an historian, you are looking into different primary source in order to put in perspective this context. So how do you approach the medieval armor, basically? So these are all of the different documents and non-written documents that you can see. And I'm specifically interested into what we call the fight books. So the fight books from the early 14th century to today. Let's argue about this. These are manuals about how to fight, so martial arts, basically. And you have a long traditions of them, with a recent scholarship devoted to this since about 20 years now. And sometimes people would confuse this with different genre. So it's not tournament books, it's not Trachten books, so pattern books, it's not war books. It is specifically, but these sometimes are intertwined. So basically, why would you be interested into this and how it helps to understand armor better? Because of course, people were trying to convey some knowledge. And if you want to ride a bicycle, you don't read a book, you just ride a bicycle. So the object is basically demonstration, then you repeat the motion, and then you correct it. So it's a bodily interaction, and it comes with orality. However, a series of people have started the endeavor of writing down this bodily knowledge. And some of them come in print form, some of them come in manuscript. This is complicated. I will not get into this. It's not the subject of the talk. But basically, these books are telling us how to fight without armor, with all of the weapons that you can see. In armor, which is different. This was the start point of my work. Is why would you, the same armbar or the same projection would be made differently while wearing armor? Why is that? And then you also have fighting on horseback, which is a different kind of technical systems and other stuff. But basically the author, they decided to say, well, if you want to actually tore this arm up, you would do it like this without armor and like this with armor. And I was willing to study this in order to better understand this technical literature. So these are just a few examples of non-written text where you can actually see the armor when the armor are not preserved in museums today. So you have sculptures, seals, wooden sculptures, tombs. But let's go into this fighting armor. So my goal was to have an armor that would be used and represented into these fight books. So this was my choice, why I chose this particular one. So this is one that is made for fighting on foot with here poleaxe, but it can go differently. This is an armor that is more common, that is used for multiple purpose here for war, let's say. And you can see this is one of the lightest armor ever. It was made by Seusenhofer in 1485 and is kept at the Hofjagd Rüstkammer in Vienna. And later, of course, as you evolve through the different evolution types, you can see different ones. But let's get into the heart of the topic. So can you actually move in with this armor, and what can you do? And of course, I can do different things because I don't have the same body as the medieval 15th century warrior. However, we have a beautiful text. If you don't know it, it's from a famous knight, which was called Boucicaut. And at the beginning of the 15th century, they started to write, well, notes and let's say, well, I will just play the video and I'll explain this. I'll turn off the video. So this video we're going to see in full. You don't have the sound, so I'll just speak over. So this famous knight, Boucicaut, puts his deeds in writing. So it's called chivalric biographies. It's the start of a new genre. And the text says how he trained for tournament in his youth. So that's the text. And you'll have captions in English on the below. So the experiments, so you can see the original one and the replica, and it's the same way, same way it moves, the original way, the same materials. So first, the text says that he can jump without the use of the stirrups on horseback. Yes, you can. Then he ran and walked at length to train to have long breathing and suffer long efforts. And this is also into the fictional texts, the romances. So the quality of the knight is his great lung capacity. So I've tried this. I've run public race with it. I've run a lot. He also exercised at length with a mace or hammer in order to train to lift, to slightly lift his arm. So you should not lift it over your head because you're exposing your lungs for weakness. You don't want that, but you have to train to use your arms. And then he climbed the underside of a big ladder up to the top without the help of his feet. So that was a hard one. Even without armor, it's hard. So, and I didn't have the biggest ladder of the world by doing this video. And then he says that if two walls are separated by one L, he can climb it up and climb down without falling. So you can do all of this. And it's not that I am a superhuman, it's just that my armor is tailor-fitted to my body. It's well attached to a technical undergarment, which is the arming doublet. I'll come into this for the last part of the talk. And if you have this, then you can really move. If you don't have this, then you cannot move. And remember the weight. In this text, in the notes, he says that in his time, no other gentleman was known. He was incredible, this Boucicaut. And he could perform the soubresaut, fully armed, without the bassinet. What is the soubresaut? So a soubresaut could be this as well, could be a dance move, or it could be this. It's sad that I could not land on my feet. When I was training, I did. But you could actually do incredible things in armor. And basically, this was a way to communicate that these deeds written down in the 15th century are possible with an armor if it's tailor-made and tailor-fitted. So for the last part of my talk, let's go into one of the most critical finds that I had during my studies since 15 years now wearing this armor. It's about bodies. And let's see this, if you know him. So you can see here Mick Jagger on stage, sorry, singing. Look at his waistline. And then compare it to an image of the fight book of a man being armed to go for foot combat. And you can see this hourglass shape. And this is restricted waistline. And if you don't have that, then you cannot function in armor. Let me go into the details here. So this is really about how the armor works on the body. So Mick Jagger here, this is one of his jumpsuits kept at the Victoria and Albert Museum. You can see this as a kind of corset, and the corset will mold your body differently. This is the tomb of Louis II and his wife in Paris. And you can see as well, if you look at the waistline, how it's shaped. Of course, when we think about corset, we think about this. But actually, when I wear my armor, my arming doublet, when I adjust it, the technical wear, the arming doublet that is under it, I will lose 6 centimeters on my waistline. So it is corseted, which doesn't run any trouble because the chest is completely free. So I cannot breathe with my belly or my stomach. I will breathe with my chest, which is fully expanded. Research on medieval arming doublets. Of course, we have less surviving examples, almost none, than armors. We know that some of these armors are restricted. They look like this hourglass shape. And a lot of the people say, well, it's because people were little. No, absolutely not. It's because it's a critical point on how the armor should rest on the body. And I will explain why. On the fight books, you can see this are in all of them, this shape, sometimes exaggerated by the artist, but it is absolutely critical. Here, one of an iconography of the early 15th century, and as well here on a fight book about the virtues and what a fighter should have. So you should look at the waistlines. So the most research being done by this was done by Tobias Capwell and others groups. He wrote a reference article in 2002 about the arming doublet and the depiction of it. Because since we don't have a lot of objects, we can see this is a few iconography. And his point is, how were they made? Why? What are the specific components? And what do we know about them? All right, so what do we know about them actually? So there is a few examples. Sometimes those are disputed. This is from the Kinsburg collection kept at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. And this is an arming doublet that was probably made, some of the pieces made between 1550 to 1650, but it's heavily restored. And it was worn by 19th century people. So it was really refitted and heavily changed. So we cannot treat this as an actual historical 15th century armor, but it has all of the different pieces or elements. And you can see you have mail attached to this, actually sewed on the upper layer. Here you can see the waistline of a doublet as well, or hackathon, and several good examples. And all see they are actually restricting the waist. So this is for the King of France. There is a lot of scholarship about this. Another scholar that comes to mind when we're looking at those specific high technical undergarments is Ralph Moffat, who translated and edited several texts that are explained or give us information on these different arming doublet and how they evolve through time. You have the original on the left and translation on the right. The translation sometimes doesn't help because there is so much technical terms. So what the hell are we doing? So my questions is, so this text gives you the way and explain how they are attached, where they are attached with which part. And this text, you know better. It's also on display in the galleries at the Royal Armouries. And this one gives us critical information that actually helped me a lot during my research. So here it says that you wear no shirt under it. This is a technical reason. I can explain why. And this doublet is made of fustian. So what the hell is fustian? Because I was really interested into what are the material involved in this. And fustian is not a specific type of fabric, it's a way of threading. So it's two different threads in one. So you can mix like hemp and silk or cotton and linen. And these are different properties. And a lot of the different layers are made with different type of fabrics. And the question is there padding? How much layers do they have? So I had to experiment a lot on this. So this is two on the right side. You can see the first version of my doublet, and it was completely wrong. If you can see that the waist is not restricted. On the version 7, which is below here, this is one that I still have, but it's overworn. Here I have a good restriction of the waist. So you could guess maybe why is it so important. And it's sad that you cannot see me on the screen because then I could explain to my buddy, maybe on the question and on the Q&A session I can show. But the idea is that the way the armor rests, if the weight is added on your shoulder or if it rests on your lower waistline, which is where your hip bones comes, this is very uncomfortable. So it will get bruises, it's very heavy, and it will impede your movement. It should rest where there is no bones. So the actual waistline, where it's in between the hips and the ribs. So here you have absolutely no bones. And if you restrict your waist, then the armor should sit there. In order to do this, why? Because the arming doublet is where the different pieces are attached. By doing the cuts between the upper and the lower body, you don't have to wear the whole weight of your armor, including the legs, on your shoulders, if the waist is restricted. If the waist is not restricted, then you do this. I will show or demonstrate on the Q&A what are the movements that are impeded by this. So if you want an armor to work, it has to be tailor-made and it has to sit on your actual waistline. And then you would be able to do all of the movements and more. So in order to make this happen, and this comes actually from, well, I can go into the history of this, but that's not the point. So what I wanted to say here to finish this talk is exactly this. So these high technological elements, they they are a mixture of three types of material: mail, that behaves differently than plate, and hardened or leather fabric. And the way it functions all together, it has to be tailor-made. And the only way it actually works if is it if it's if your waist is restricted and the armor sits on it. Otherwise, you can't move. Thank you very much for your attention. On the QR code, you can see most of the videos that I've showed into this talk and a few selected articles. And thank you very much for your attention, and I'll be happy to answer your questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Daniel. So I've given everyone a chance to do the QR code, so I will stop your sharing and put you on the big screen. So do you want to demonstrate the shoulders waist point while you're up?
Yes, yes. So if you can see me here. So imagine now that this is a waistcoat, all right? So here on this part, you will attach the weight of the legs, all right? So you will have additional weight on your legs here. And if you want to, let's say, just do this, raise your arm like this, you can see that it is not restricted here in the movement. So I have to lift the whole weight of the leg armor in order to lift my arm. However, if it's restricted, so let's do this. I restrict here my waist. Can you see this? So sorry for the blurriness.
It's okay.
Now, if I do this, it's not connected anymore. So I'm free to move my arm freely without having to lift this. The other part that is important is that the hourglass shape of the cuirasse, so the pensia which comes in front, allows for my elbow to move here. So it gives extra room in order to do this, which is really needed when you fight. So here you have more space. You can actually move, and you can also move like this. So this movement, which helps you to stand up or do anything that you need, is absolutely needed. So guys, if you're wearing armor and if your waist is not restricted, change your arming doublet and make new experiments, because it really changed completely my experience wearing armor.
Yes. Now, just very quickly before we go to audience questions, I don't like to redeem the Victorians for too much, but if the arming doublet is so critical and they didn't understand what its purpose was, could that perhaps explain why they thought that medieval armors were incredibly heavy and difficult to wear and restricted you, but simply because they don't understand the vital component that lies underneath it?
Absolutely, absolutely, and for many, many, many years. Also, the fact that these armor are not objects that are in our common life, and they are seen through case in museums or in collections. They look weird. We don't understand how we put to them, and if you don't have the arming doublet under it and all of these technical experiences, of course, this is what you think.
Yes. Yeah. We had a question from Michael White online, which I'll read verbatim. I'm not sure I quite understand it, but are the bodies of these knights like this because the armors were made for young people who were slimmer and more athletic, which I think is about the illustrations. But could we anticipate, because we've seen Henry VIII's kind of physical degradation, just how thick he gets through the waist.
Yeah.
Are these idealized illustrations, or will we anticipate young knights actually looking like quite this wasp waisted?
All right, so I will answer that question, but first I will make a little detour. So in my even today with professional museum directors or creators, I said, when I came to them with my project, they said, "Ah, you should not do this because you're too tall." And actually, the armor that I choose from Frederick the Victorious, we could make specific measures. So, for example, from this bone here that you can see, and this one on the bottom. So I have exactly the same shin than him, and actually the same height at 1 centimeter difference. So were people big or small or, of course, warriors? They had different sizes. And the misconception about them being little, it's a
Mm,
long debate. I'll not get into this. Are they idealized? Yes, they are. If we look at the feasts of the deeds of Boucicaut, this is a promotion. It was in his best then. He was 18 years old when he with his first tournament at the heights of his prowess. And yes, this is idealized culture.
that was another question I had on terms of practicality. So I presume that most people on the medieval battlefield weren't wearing armors that were perfectly sized for them, that they were either hand-me-downs or stuff that they'd acquired on the battlefield. Did you, is this phase two? Are you going to get a badly fitting armor and see just how much worse it is, or?
All right. So imagine yourself now. You are with a billionaire and a friend that has no work, and you have to drive.
Mhm,
So you can choose a very fancy sports car or a bad second used Fiat. Basically, it will achieve the same thing. So
mhm,
it will take you from point A to point B, offer some protection, but the experience of driving it is very different. So it would really depend on how much money you had. And all of my talk and all of the pieces that we've looked at was the higher end,
mhm,
high technological exoskeletons. Most
mhm,
of the soldiers had what we call munition armor. So um, uh, not tailor fit, but from the shelf, and you can then adjust. For
mhm,
example, you could, if you are a footman and you just have the cuirasse, so the pensière, this is not a problem because it's not connected to the legs, so you don't have the same technical problem on how you will move with them.
mhm,
So different solutions with different means, financial means, and functions on the battlefield as well.
mhm. Great. Two questions from Man and Sofa. So, one is, has anyone tried implementing shock absorption, which he says is to allow higher fall, but I presume falling isn't necessarily the major issue on the battlefield. The other question is, does textured plating provide better impact or deflection compared to polished?
Okay, so can we just, I'm not sure I understand the first question. Could you just repeat one?
So, I mean, they say, I think it was in response to your climbing the walls. I think they might have been a little bit concerned about you, which is anyone had tried implementing shock absorption to protect you when you fall. Now, you don't fall in armor, but you do need shock absorption. But I wondered if you could say a little bit about that.
Yes, of course. So something that I was really afraid when I started doing some experiments where there is connection with the bones on the armors. For example, you would when you fall, you would land on your elbows. So oh, it's gonna hurt. So I should have padding. So my first version had padding here because I was afraid. But actually, the way it's made
Mhm,
will completely prevent any harm here because actually there is space that is made, and where the elbow protection sits, it's on the muscular part here,
mhm,
here, and never here. So there is a space, and this is designed exactly to do this, so to prevent this shock. You don't
yeah,
need to have shock protections. Where you need is this part. So if the armor sits here,
mhm,
and you take a heavy blow here, could be lance blow, could be any
mhm,
blows, what will happen is that it will push back here. So in this part, where you have the collarbone and everything, this is where you need padding. And that's probably the only part when you actually need it,
mhm,
with the suit that I've experimented with. And you should not be afraid as well with the head and with the specific type of head defense that I had. It's a great bassinet. So my neck is completely protected
mhm,
because it's tied over the breastplate. And then I can move my head inside like this, but
mhm.
the helmet doesn't move. So even if I fall on my head from the wall or on a horseback, I will not be damaged.
Good.
Second question.
As I said, they also asked about the textured plating. So the Gothic style armors we see with the fluting, is that for better impact or deflection compared to polished?
So the Blair said that there are basically two types, the Gothic and the minimalist part, which is fully polished. So the fully polished is not to try to blindfold your enemy with the ray of the sun. It has two different functions. The first function is to actually, so it's not only about protection, about piercing. You're right, whatever the author of the question was, it's about deflection. So you should not offer straight surface towards your enemy points. And the second reason of the polished part is not about aesthetics. It is also about aesthetics, but the technical part is about maintenance. If you have a highly polished one, it will not rust. Or rust will be less likely to actually, it's easier to clean, basically. So these two options are the mechanical options why the polished surface. And the fluting, it's not only about mimicking fashion or put lines that are interesting, is to harden the surface with less material. So if you flute this and you temper it, then you have less material and it's more resistant. But the downside of it is that it will be less deflecting.
That somewhat brings us on to a question from Davina Duckworth. So she asks if you experimented with different gauges or thicknesses of armor plate. But I presume if your suit's a replica, you followed the original. But again, did they use different thicknesses for different purposes?
Yes. Back in 2008, when I started this, I had a list of 10 armors makers worldwide that could replicate an original armor that could fit my task list. And some of them said, well, I have to start in an experimental archaeological way. So I would start with having 500 armor strike to make the plates and to adjust the thinness. And it was a craft where they had time then and specialized craftsmen. And the thickness of the plates is different on the different pieces. It comes from the raw material, which are the plates, which sometimes was another craft. And the armor maker, while he was putting this into shape, will also act. So, for example, on the helmet, which is one piece of steel put into together, you have thickness that is between 1 centimeters in the very specific armor. So we have example of this to very, very thin to 2 millimeters. Especially, it's interesting because some of the plates, they overlap or they move to one another so that you don't have to have the same thickness all over. So it's really difficult for armor makers now that works with industrial sheets, which are the same, to come to these different thickness.
That's interesting, actually, because we did have a question from Jalen, which is how much of an advantage would a hypothetical cutting edge new armor have over the previous generation of armor? But actually, it sounds like it might, in many respects, be worse, effectively, because you've got less hands-on type stuff if you're manufacturing.
So we decided, I said, I'm not interested into an experimental archaeological element to redo exactly one suit. I don't care because I didn't intend to do test. I don't want to be shot at. So if my armor is slightly more resistant, the raw material than the original, for my specific case study, which was the impact of wearing armor during locomotion and bodily movement, I didn't have to have the fluted rivets. I didn't have to have the exact raw material. I didn't want to test that. What I wanted to test is how it moves on the body. So no, I haven't experimented with different ones and I haven't been shot at, and I'm not sure I want to.
No, and it's something that we've kind of looked into here in the context of potential experimental archaeology. But the problem is that if you've got a suit that's 400 years old, then how much of it is issues with the design and the manufacture versus how much is just it's 400 years old effectively.
Yes, well, yeah, the material ages, but you have beautiful literature of Alan Williams about the different components of the what are the mechanical components of the raw material, the different steel, the different heat treatments that you can have, and all of this has an effect on how it ages. And new suits of armor are best than previous one into the how do you say this? If you want to do performance, I would be very, very I don't know. It's like a dream. I would like to wear an original suit and do some of the tests, but I'm not living in the 19th century anymore. So we're living in the
No.
21st century, and there are different elements to get into consideration.
Okay. Uh, so unless we've got any questions in the room, because I'm mindful I've been neglecting you, I've got a couple, one relating to maintenance and the other one looking to the future. But if anyone's got any questions, I'll take them. Yeah, lovely. If you come up with one, stick your hand up, hopefully. But yes, so because Man and Sofa had an interesting one. Between the plates, is there any self-cleaning, e.g. brushes to clean residue? Now, I know that that's not the case because they had a lot of manual labor available back then, but could you just say a little bit how you would clean the armor to maintain that flexibility and the yeah the movement between plates, etc.
Yeah. As a researcher at the university, when you further your career, then sometimes you get research assistants
Hmm.
and to do secretary work. And I said, I don't want that. I want a squire. I want a squire because every time I put this armor, I know that I have 2 hours of cleaning. And that is something that if you are a knight of the 21st century, this is a very heavy workload. I've tried to get my kids to help clean and it didn't work. It worked for 5 minutes, but all right. So how do you clean it? Actually, if it's remade with an original material that the how do you see this? The steel is not treated, so it will rust. So you have to clean it, dry clean it, and it is this. In some places, inside, it's difficult to get under it because of the different rivets. How do you get the flexibility going? So this is high technical systems with rivets, with leather straps, with different elements. So I'm a master. I'm not an armorer myself. But I'm a master of riveting. So if you have to treat the leather, you have to treat the different elements. You have to grease it. And all of these take skills for maintenance. And this was done for the 15th century knights by the squires and people in their household. Me, it's done by myself.
So again, yeah. So if someone is out there looking for a way to improve the armor, then potentially self-cleaning would be the ideal thing. Which does
Mhm.
actually it touches on the question we've had from a couple of people, from Michael and from Davina, which is, well, Michael in fact asked, have you been approached by modern battlefield armor designers? Davina asked, do people still use plate armor in a modern sense? Now I know a little bit about this from another connection, but I'm interested. Yeah, has anyone come to you and started asking pointed questions?
No, but when I started to design the different studies that I wanted to do, they said, well, you should just get into the great scholarship that they have on bulletproof vests and different people that have not the same concerns, but actually some of the same fears and technical achievements that they wanted to. No, me personally, no. No. Movie makers, video players, yes. Actual people for the battlefield, no.
Mhm. Yeah, so it's something I've come across tangentially. We do work with places that are interested in material science, and of course, they're very excited about the potential of carbon nanotubes, and they're thinking maybe they can put someone in armor that will at least, defeat bullets or something like that. But it's one of those things that's sort of been 20 years away for about the past 50 years. So we'll have to see how it goes. But potentially, yeah, you could, I do hope that they if anyone is looking for styling tips and would like to come to us or Daniel and talk about it, it would be great to see, the armor return to the battlefield if it makes people safer. So, but no, so that was everything I think we had time for. But I just want to say a very, very, fulsome thank you to Daniel for an absolutely fascinating lecture. So I know you've got your link to you're giving people a QR code. Is there anywhere else if people would like to find out more? Are you on social media, or do you have any big books coming out in the immediate future?
Yes, but not on armor, on physical culture in the 19th century. So I'm into gymnastics now, no armor. I'm getting old. I don't want to clean anymore. But yes, on
Just
my website, you'll find most of my scholarships, the videos, and the different stuff. So just click on that one.
all the enthusiastic fit people who are watching, yes, feel free to check that out. Yes, so that's everything from us. I've just got some additional thank yous. Thank you to Rob, who is behind the scenes for managing the feed to YouTube. I hope everyone's been behaving themselves over there. And to Laurie and Leeds for chipping in and helping to stage the event. Thank you very much. Most of all, thank you to the audience, both here and in the room and elsewhere, for all your questions, for your comments and your engagement. We would like to know what you thought of the talk. If you've got any comments on the staging, this is the first time we've done a remote one in the museum for a while. So if online, if you have any observations on what we could do better to stage it, then please do let us know. I've put a link to the survey in the chat in Zoom. It should come out on YouTube, and also it's in the closing slides if you don't mind letting us know. The new events are being added to the Winter Lecture Series as we speak, so please keep an eye on our event listings, which is royalarmouries.org/what's-on. Now, the next talk we've got scheduled is actually on the 11th of February, and it'll look at how museums in Europe and America have tackled the weighty issue of displaying the Second World War. Now, I look forward very much to seeing you at future Armouries events, but in the meantime, I hope you have a very enjoyable Christmas.